This is where we get into the really self-indulgent part of the wine selection. I really wanted to try the 04, just because, well, for two reasons. It was my first harvest at Silverado, so it was a difficult one. So somebody asked me once, "What does a general manager do?" And oddly enough, the first thing I thought of was the gum that I had scraped off the parking lot the day before. So the answer is a little bit of everything. I always say I get to run the winery the 2% of the time that it's not running me. And you know, one of the things the general manager does is spend a lot of time with his winemaker. It's really the most important relationship in the winery. Well, no, that's not true. The most important relationship is the one I have with Ron and Diane. Let's just put that on the table. And really Diane. But you know, it's always a little bit nerve-wracking for a winemaker to get a new boss, obviously, and it's always a little nerve-wracking for a new guy to come into the winery and try to figure out if, you know, the palates are meshing and the basic philosophies are kind of there. So this was my first chance to work with John Emmerich, who is just a tremendous winemaker, and we're unbelievably privileged at Silverado to have only two people in our 30-year history look after the vines and look after the wines. Jack Stewart for 23 years, and overlapping with Jack, John, who celebrated his 20th year with us, his 20th harvest last fall. So it's also a year, you know, it's one of the, well, I don't have a memory anyway, so it probably hardly matters, but I mean, it's one of the tragedies of winemaking that really great vintages are so forgettable for winemakers. You know, you just don't remember anything about them because, frankly, let's face it, you're not working that hard, right? Whereas when you have a challenging year, and 04 was certainly one of those years, you work really hard. We ended up culling about 20% of the wine that we made in this vintage. Just because it was a shorter year, it was a warmer year, it was a year where the tannins were kind of chalky and pasty and frankly not that delicious. And so this is where you really earn your keep as a blender. This is where and as you know, it's where John earns his keep making those critical picking decisions and those critical drain and press decisions after fermentation. When have we really coaxed all the little polysaccharides out of the skin and are right at that moment where we need to get the wine off the skins before it becomes bitter, right? Those are critical moments in the life of a vintage. You know, when you know how you prune, when you do leaf removal, when you do green harvest, when you pick, and then the big one is the drain and press after you've fermented. And if I can brag about John, I think he took a really challenging year and made an absolutely superb wine out of it. And it goes, I think, to another question that we had at the table here, which is, okay, you know, we're used to Bordeaux and vintages and vintage variations. What's the deal in Napa with vintages and variations? And my short answer to that is, like the rest of California, you've got to go back to that Humboldt current and what's going on with the fog and the coolness and the air conditioning and that sort of thing. You know, typically, opposite of Bordeaux, which has its great vintages in slightly warmer years, Napa will have its great vintages in slightly cooler years. So when you open up, you know, whatever you're reading with Jancis Robinson in it, and she says it was a great year for Pinot in Napa, I say buy the Cabernet. I mean, of course buy the Pinot. I have lovely friends who make Pinot in Napa, and you should buy their wines. But the cooler years for us have a tendency to be more structured and have a tendency to give us more time to make those critical decisions throughout the growing season. Whereas a warmer year like 04 and actually 03 was pretty tough as well. In those years, you really got to make a lot of decisions. But generally speaking, the sort of range of variation for us in Napa is a little narrow. We don't you know, mostly because we don't get those, you know, those rains during harvest, which can really be you know, those are not fun, right? And so we're quite fortunate in California. In my lifetime, let's see, 88 and 89 with rain. And let me see, 93, and 08. How many was that? I'm probably forgetting one. It's probably 3 or 4, right? Where we've had to face rain, and I don't mean rain like Bordeaux gets. I mean just kind of a little, just enough to sort of start some botrytis and make you really get nervous, right? Get a little jumpy. That's not very many, when you think about it. So we're very, very privileged to have this sort of naturally dry and moderate climate, particularly during harvest. So in his absence, I toast John Emmerich, who's a fabulous winemaker. I think the 04 shows that. And since we're on it, and we're getting into the current vintages, the 07 Estate Cabernet and the 07 Solo, I just wanted to talk a little bit about those differences. Our estate now is really just the 2 ranches that I mentioned, our Mount George Ranch, which is a little cooler, and it's where we have the Merlot growing, and the Cab Franc particularly, and then the Stag's Leap Ranch. So our estate wines are a blend of those 2, and as we mentioned, a little bit of that UC Davis, that little dollar of cassis that we sneak in from Oakville.